Welcome in. After a very successful weekend for the London Knights organization is the Night Shift Podcast. Kyle Grimard, Mike Stubbs, your host as always. And again, you can stream us wherever you stream your podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also watch full links to the podcast up on YouTube on the London Knights page. Just go search them. Mike, a pretty successful weekend for the London Knights. Two big wins against two very good opponents that were very tall tests, and I don't want to say a measuring stick, but it definitely raised the bar a little bit heading in, knowing where London could end up had they come away with two victories. Lo and behold, Mike, we're sitting here, 2 wins at home, and all of a sudden atop the Midwest Division, and they leapfrog who they just played on Sunday, which was the Sioux Greyhounds. I saw a lot of very complete hockey from this team, Mike.
Yeah, coming into this weekend, you're right. This was a weekend where maybe not quite a measuring stick because you're not playing a Brantford, but you're playing really good teams in Owen Sound and Sault Ste. Marie. And we can get into the Sault Ste. Marie game. Who wasn't involved in the Sault Ste. Marie game is a pretty long and distinguished list. And you look at the hockey that the Knights played, complete. That's a perfect word. They did play complete games. If you look at their scoring chances in the games, especially on Sunday against Sault Ste. Marie, they gave up one scoring chance in the third period. One. That was it. This was a 2-2 game, and they kept Sault Ste. Marie at bay. And the Greyhounds have a lot of people who can do damage. Brady Martin is a 5th overall pick in the NHL. He played 3 games for the Nashville Predators. They've picked up players like Quinn McKenzie, who is a dynamite forward. And then Noah Laus, we got a chance to see him. He's only 16 years old. He'll be the captain of the Sioux Greyhounds someday. He was the captain of the Toronto Junior Canadiens. Great players who can do damage. And Chase Reed promises to be a first-rounder in the National Hockey League. Yep. And he looked every bit of it. He hit 2 goalposts. Otherwise, we might not be talking about a London Knights 3-2 shootout win over Sault Ste. Marie. But the Knights defensively gave up 1 scoring chance. And that's drawing the little house and seeing how many shots come from inside that little house in front of the net. And it was 1. And Seb Gatto was fantastic again in net. How good was he in the first period when there were a lot of chances? There were odd man rushes. There were 3 quality 2-on-1s. And Gatto made this incredible right pad save on one of them. And then the other one, the one that Brady Martin, of course, Brady Martin has the puck. Brady Martin has the puck and he gets deep and he goes to center it. And Marco Mignosa is alone in front. There was a bit of a breakdown. He was alone in front. What does Gatto do? Breaks up the pass with his goal stick. There was more Knights goaltending from Alexei Medvedev on the Friday night against Owen Sound and on the Sunday from Seb Gatto that helps to get this team to where it is they need. Big credit, again, for what they do in goal. Want to say hi to Johnny Gatto. Met Seb's dad after the game. Great guy. And checks out the podcast. So, Johnny, thanks for doing that. And here's hoping we just get to see your son continue to do what he is doing in net. Because it's fun to watch.
I mean, when you have 2 goaltenders that not only you root for, but they're close and they've got now a great relationship. I actually talked to Seb a little bit when he was the first star on Sunday, and just his relationship and his back and forth with Alexei, because, you know, they're starting to develop it, right? You work together, you're sitting beside each other, probably in the dressing room. And Seb said, honestly, the relationship is great. He said, I love when he gets away to victory, and he loves and cheers me on when I win. And that's the way you want to have it. You don't want to have any animosity. You don't want to have any angst towards one another. You want to be rooting for each other because, Mike, they are teammates. They work together. They are with one team. And you want them to be able to have that kind of relationship, and it makes you play better. Yes, there's always a little bit of friendly competition for sure, but you don't want to be wishing ill will on one another, and there is not that. You can see it clear as day. They were joking in the hallway. I was walking by doing the pregame report, and they were joking because Alexei was getting ready, and Seb was doing his pregame because he was getting ready to start, and it's a good relationship they have, and Seb was so grateful to be a part of this organization and for what he's been able to do so far, and he has lived up to the hype right now. The Knights, you can make an argument, Mike, top 3 goaltending duo in the OHL, and it might not be 3. Like, it's good.
Yeah, it might be 1. It might be number one, and we'll continue to talk about them. We spent a lot of time on the goalies last week for what they did. And you also look at the fact that you use the word team. And that's a word that Mark Hunter has used a lot around the players, around the team, at times when he has addressed the team, where there was really a role for the older players to show the younger players this is the way that things go. There's been an awful lot of teaching. In fact, we asked Rick Stedman just where they sit right now in terms of teaching and learning on the London Knights.
Teaching, we're getting there. The guys have learned a lot. It's been a lot on them to start the year, but you can see out on the ice now they know what they're doing. They know where they're supposed to be. They're talking to each other and working their way through. So we're getting where we need to be, and it's a building process every day.
London Knights assistant coach Rick Stedman. So ongoing process, but you're seeing things. In fact, if you go to Friday night and the game against the Owen Sound Attack, the Knights scored 3 of their 5 goals on breakaways. And remember, one of the goals was an empty netter. So 3 of the 5 goals on breakaways. And it was a case of just identifying what was happening on the ice and being able to take advantage of it. The other part, you've got players like Jackson Cover who can send these beautiful passes into areas. It's not about seeing a guy's stick and putting it on his tape. It's about putting the puck into an area. Here's Jackson, who, remember, has had this great experience with roller hockey, but kids, parents, multi-sports, Wayne Gretzky was big into this years ago. Multi-sports. Landon Sim and his hand-eye batting pucks out of the air to score goals that put the Knights ahead to stay in the OHL Championship Series in Game 5. He does that because he played AAA baseball growing up. And so multi-sport, here's Jackson Cover on what makes him a guy who can make passes like the one he made to Braden Clark against Owen Sound.
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of quarterback, a little bit of soccer. So my brother, he played football growing up, so I'd say watching him helps me a lot, and especially with soccer, playing midfield would help a lot with that too.
Midfielder in soccer. That's what it is. And what's the job of a midfielder in soccer? To put balls to where strikers can run into them and create scoring chances. And that's exactly where Jackson Cover gets that from. Dynamite athlete, dynamite IQ. And as he said, Braden Clark finished it with authority. We saw a few of those. Sam O'Reilly with his shootout move. He used the same one against the Sioux Greyhounds that he'd used against the Owen Sound Attack. This wrister that goes into the net. It's a no-doubter with authority. And the overtime against the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, how fun was that? Even though Sault Ste. Marie had the puck most of the time.
Yeah, they really did. But, the Knights, what I loved about that, you could tell, right? They kept pulling the puck back out into the neutral zone, trying to set up for the perfect play. And they were trying to get the Knights to bite. They were trying to get them to get impatient. They were trying to get them to maybe cheat a little bit and try to jump and intercept the pass, or, maybe cut a guy off that they weren't normally covering. And that would leave another spot of the ice open. The Knights didn't budge. They didn't budge one bit, Mike. They stayed to their system. They ended up getting a couple chances. Once the Sioux Greyhounds made a mistake, they started coming forward, and they had a couple chances towards the end, ultimately before the overtime ended, and they went in a shootout. But, I want to talk about just the Sam O'Reilly and that move that he has, and that spot in particular. A lot of guys at times, low blocker seems to be a spot that a lot of guys like to shoot at. That is primarily, though, with left-handed shooters. It's a little bit easier of a spot to get if you're a left-hand shot. Sam O'Reilly's a right-handed shot. So what he does is he goes the opposite side, but you can tell, too, low glove is a difficult one for goaltenders, because when you're a goaltender, you're told to keep your hands in front of you. And sometimes when your hands are in front, they're often set a little bit higher to have yourself set up and ready to go in position. So Sam is not only putting the puck in a perfect spot just above the pad, he's getting it below the glove. So it's a lot harder, Mike, to have your glove come down than it is to come up and meet the puck. And that's why that spot has been so popular. It's why he's been so successful with it. As a goalie who's been beat many times by that play and that shot, it is incredibly hard to stop, especially in a shootout and in a one-on-one.
Yeah, and he just nails it. He's done it twice. Then Wilmot scores in the shootout as well, and the Knights pick up that victory. And now, you're right, they are in first place in the Midwest Division. So, I know that we harp on some successes sometimes, but I think this needs to be pointed out. Here we are, basically a third of the way through the season. 22 games and a bit is a third of the way through the season. We're at 21, so we're right in that neighborhood. And the London Knights, who have been to 3 consecutive OHL championship series, who have won 2 consecutive OHL championships, and who have been to 2 straight Memorial Cups and have won one of those Memorial Cups, this should be the year when they do have to step back. I mean, this should be a year when the Knights have 15 wins. But because of the way the players have come in, because of the new faces, because of the way they bought in, if you look at the teams that have a better winning percentage than the London Knights right now, Brantford's going to be there. They haven't lost in regulation time yet. They still have yet to lose. Still doesn't touch the 29-0-2 because they've lost in overtime. And the team of the century with the Knights never did lose in overtime. So Brantford's up there. They're spectacular. They're a juggernaut. Windsor has been a juggernaut. They are up there. And the Ottawa 67s, who are 8-1-0-1 as we record this, in their last 10. So those are the 3 teams with a better winning percentage than the London Knights. 3 of them. That's it. There are 16 teams below the Knights in winning percentage standings.
I was talking to a few people at the game on Sunday, and they were asking me just like about the team and how they're playing, and I told them straight up, I'm like, this isn't normal. Like this team, no team normally after 3 straight OHL finals appearances, 2 championships, and a Memorial Cup can then go out the next year into year 4 of that run and at any point in the season be sitting first in their division based off of everything. The amount of players that you lose, maybe coaches get hired to go to different places. The turnover, normally it's a lot younger of a team. You know, your goaltender, normally it's an older guy who eventually leaves, and now you're bringing in the young guy who doesn't have that experience. For some reason, there is just a perfect blend, Mike, of adding in a player or 2 at the deadline to help facilitate going into the next year, and those young guys stepping up and filling those bigger roles. We talked about Henry Brustevich and what he's been able to do over the last couple of years. Last year, he obviously took a big jump, but this year in particular, because of, the absence of Sam Dickinson and Oliver Bonk, I know Brustevich didn't play on the weekend, but he has been such a focal point. Jared Woolley, I remember him from a couple of years back scoring the teddy bear toss goal as a guy who was just thrown into the lineup wearing a cage and all, and now he's a draft pick of the LA Kings and a forefront of this team that you just do on. Alexei Medvedev didn't start a game last year in the OHL playoffs and the Memorial Cup. He played a little bit, but Alexei Medvedev was not the starter, and now he is like one of the premier goaltenders. It is crazy to see how the changeover hasn't affected this team, and they are still going out and winning games against really good teams.
Well, let me put it this way. If we go back in time to the first of those 3 visits to the OHL Championship Series, I'm going to look at the regulars who are still on the team right now from that roster. So here I go. I'm going to scroll down. I'm looking.
This is last year's team.
This would be the first team that went to the OHL Championship against the Peterborough Petes.
Yes,
so the
almost
first of
3
these
years ago.
4 years. So I've just gone through the forwards. Sam Dickinson, who's with San Jose right now, he was on that team. And I'm at the end. That's it. Easton Cowan played a couple of games. He's not on this team. Sam O'Reilly was around, but he was playing in the, at that time, Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League. He played 5 games for the London Knights that season. Will Nickel, who again hasn't played yet this year, but is getting closer to coming back. Had a good chat with Will a little while ago. He played 5 games that season. So you essentially have 10 regular season games and none in the playoffs for either O'Reilly or Nickel. So you have 10 regular season games left over from the first time that the Knights went on this big, long run. And it's not to say that's where they're headed this year, but I think it does take us to a point where you see this team rise up and hit top spot in the Midwest Division, and you think, really, again? You are in the mix in your division again? You don't have anybody left from the first of these really successful teams who was playing regular minutes. You had a couple of guys who were shown, hey, this is what it's like to play in the OHL. Now go back to the GOHL and continue to have successful years, which both O'Reilly and Nickel did. It's completely different faces. So congratulations once again to the scouting staff and the coaching staff. You continue to defy logic, not just odds, logic.
Yeah, and watching, some of the guys step up and play certain roles too, Mike. It is so fun to watch. Everyone is so bought in with this team, with this system, with this staff and the players. I mean, how seamless has Brady Wasserlin looked coming into this team? He's been scoring well, but he does a lot of other things around him. He makes his teammates better. His line mates are setting him up too. And that has been such a smooth transition. Sometimes that's not always the case, but he's been spectacular since coming back in. The back end still looks good despite all the guys that have left from last year. We've mentioned the goaltending off the top and how good that's been. And then early in the year, Mike, what was the one thing that we talked about was they were struggling a little bit on the offensive side to find offense from the forwards. Are we mentioning that now? I don't think so. I think this team has got a plethora of guys that can find a way to put the puck in the back of the net, and we saw it all weekend long.
Yeah, no, pretty crazy. I mean, the only thing to really compare this to that I can think of off the top of my head is the Sioux Greyhounds, who were outstanding early 90s. So they won 42 games in 90-91, and they went to the Memorial Cup. And then they won 41 games the next year, and they went to the Memorial Cup. And then there was a super series between the Sioux Greyhounds and the Peterborough Petes to determine the host of the Memorial Cup. Can you imagine hosting a Memorial Cup? And we're about to find out as we record this who will be doing that, either Kitchener or Guelph. But can you imagine hosting an event like that and having about 2 months to put it together? That's what it was like back in the day. So in 1993, Sault Ste. Marie swept Peterborough in what they called the Super Series to become the hosts of the Memorial Cup. They took the top team in each division, and they played head-to-head. And then Peterborough ended up beating Sault Ste. Marie in the league championship to get themselves into the Memorial Cup. Sault Ste. Marie ended up winning the Memorial Cup that year. And big celebrations. The next year, they were still good. So this was 42, 41, 38. They had 35 wins, and then they did drop off a little bit. They only had 17 wins the year after that. And then I guess you can pick the Erie Otters and their 4 straight 50-win seasons. This is the kind of air. Now, the Knights don't have 4 straight 50-win seasons at this point, but this is the kind of company that this team is forcing their way into in terms of conversation.
I mean, it really is, and it's going to be hard not to talk about, especially if this team does well once again come playoff time, because there's a lot of young players. Like, there's a lot of the nucleus on this team, and there's like outside of a couple players, but a lot of this team's nucleus is still eligible to come back next year. So if we're already talking about where this team is standing right now, and if they continue on this trajectory, and we'll see what happens throughout the rest of the year, because you never know what happens. It's junior hockey. But if they go on if they make it to the second, third finals again, and they have another plethora of players coming on back, who knows what's going to happen, Mike? But so far they have been, well, as of right now, the best team in the Midwest Division.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Crazy.
And it's why we wanted to stop and talk about it, because it doesn't just defy probability and odds. It defies logic in the way that junior hockey is supposed to work. Mike Zakharov, big congratulations to Big Mike, Big Z, because he scored his first OHL goal on Sunday against the Sioux Greyhounds. You could feel it coming. He was so close. We had a chance to talk with Mike before that game because he's also got a great story. This is a guy who decided, much like Alexei Medvedev, to leave Russia and come and play in North America with no promises, no strings, no anything. And let's just see what happens. Here is Mike on doing that. When you left Russia, how old were you?
I just turned 16 and just jumped on the plane, went here. Yeah, so kind of like crazy stuff. But yeah, like Canada was, first couple of months was like kind of tough because didn't know any English, so like hard time speaking with all the guys, but still like try to pick it up in the dressing room and just trying to hang out with the guys, being around, getting used to the rinks because rinks here are way smaller than in Russia. So yeah, just having a good time. Then get drafted by London. Just such an honor being here, being around the guys, seeing all the facilities, the town, the fans. So glad that I'm here. So yeah.
What was it that made you want to leave Russia to try hockey in Canada?
I don't know. I've been just speaking with my dad, thinking about it. He knew a couple people here, so he just offered me and said that hockey's here might be better for you. You might be a better player here because you can develop here better. That's what I think.
And so far, so great, right?
Yeah, I think I chose the right organization to the best development probably in Canada. So yeah, I'm really glad that I'm here and developing, getting better, getting stronger. So yeah.
London Knights forward Mike Zakharov on the trip to North America, being selected by the London Knights and having himself a great old time in the way that he has played so far. Now he has his first OHL goal. The Knights do have some injury issues.
Yeah.
You mentioned Henry Brustevich missed both games, and he's out with an upper body injury. We hope it's not anything long-term. Caleb Mitchell has an upper body injury. He missed the Sunday game against the Sioux. Evan Van Gorp was out with a lower body injury. You still have Cohen Bidgood, who's been out week to week, and you still have Will Nickel, who's been out month to month. So the Knights are also doing this down a few key players, and they also didn't have head coach Dale Hunter behind the bench for the Sunday win over Sault Ste. Marie. He was out with an illness. And so next player up and sometimes next coach up. And they have kept the roll going. Kyle, we've got a little bit of league news. The Sarnia Sting elected to part ways with their head coach, Alan Letang. So we'll see what that does in the grand scheme of things. I think the Sting, I still thought that if even though they have a lot of young players, I thought this could be a year when they were right there. And kind of right there with the London Knights, maybe below Windsor and Kitchener. Owen Sound's been not necessarily a surprise, but if everything had gone well in Owen Sound, this is what they should look like. And that's exactly what's happening. And so I thought Sarnia would be in that mix. And we'll see what happens now after a coaching change. The other big news from the league, and this changes something that goes back to when Corey Perry was drafted by the London Knights. Corey Perry's draft year, which was one dynamite draft year. If I'm remembering it right, I think it was Patrick O'Sullivan and then Tim Brent and then Jeff Carter. I might be mixing up a couple. And then Mike Richards and then Corey Perry. Before the end of the podcast, I'll make sure I have that right. But I think those were the first four picks. We're talking outstanding junior hockey players, all of them, and then outstanding NHL players from that mix as well. That was the first year that the draft was held online. That was 2001.
Wow.
2001. And it started going fast. It was bing, 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 bing. Well, the OHL has now announced that they are heading back to a live draft format, and it's going to be taking place in Kingston. So this should be an awful lot of fun. June 12th and 13th, and the league has already said, hey, fans, prospects, they're going to be in the Toucan is going to have a line all the way down Princess Street at some point. The Toucan is a fantastic place. It is going to be jammed. There's going to be a lot going on. What a great place to have this event. Kingston is so fun in its downtown, and they're bringing it back to have a live draft. The QMJHL does this. The Western Hockey League has been online for a while, even before the OHL did it. But what a nice move. And we get back to seeing players that get to walk up and be recognized. And I know that there are some negatives sometimes. There are guys who go undrafted, but I think this is one of those things that when we're talking about prospects and you're talking about kind of the next step and how junior hockey works, we're following U16 more than we've ever followed it before. Yeah. And so to be able to recognize this and celebrate this, Kyle, in my mind, it makes perfect sense.
Well, and it does too. And it also gives the players a chance to go to something that's exciting. It's something that you look forward to. It doesn't, bring the level of viability down. You know what I mean? Like, in a draft event when you're so young to potentially, get drafted by an Ontario Hockey League team is a big deal. And you don't want to have that secluded to just sitting on a computer waiting and maybe getting a phone call, and that would obviously is great in itself, but to be there live and to have that selection, and you're dressed up and your family is with you, and it now becomes like a whole memory for not only your family but your friends who get to watch you. They say, we got to watch you on the live stream, we got to watch you on TV get to go get drafted, and it makes it a little bit more wholesome, a little more special. It brings everybody together. You can have conversations with people that are at the live draft too, and like the online stuff definitely has a place to an extent, but there's something about that live event of being there, and then it only elevates the higher you go levels wise with getting drafted to the National Hockey League and having award shows and Hall of Fame inductions, and all of that is in person for a reason, because it's an event, it's a moment that you want to be a part of, to have and to share with everybody. So I think this is a great move, and the fact that you've hyped up Kingston as much as you have, I can't wait for this. This is gonna be exciting.
And that's it. Kingston has bid for Memorial Cups before, and for whatever reason, there have been other cities that have landed those Memorial Cups. I think this is kind of a second Memorial Cup. It's much smaller, much shorter, but Kingston is one of those cities that you would want something like that in, because its downtown is so walkable, it's so historic, and everything can kind of be close by. Everything, it won't feel like, oh, well, we've got to go out to this center here, and then we've got to go out to this center here. Everything will be right there, and I think that will have just a tremendous feel to it. Okay, I did check out the 2001 draft order, and I did make a mistake, and it makes things even better.
Okay.
So Patrick O'Sullivan did go first overall.
Yep.
Nathan Horton went second overall to the Oshawa Generals. So it goes Patrick O'Sullivan, Nathan Horton, Jeff Carter, who is going to be honored by the Sioux Greyhounds when the Knights are in Sault Ste. Marie on their northern road trip that is coming up. And Jeff Carter just went into the London Sports Hall of Fame. Mike Richards and Corey Perry.
Wow.
And then it didn't stop there. Danny Fritchie, Anthony Stewart, BJ Crombeen, Brad Richardson, who played 17 years in the National Hockey League.
Good NHL play. Oh, yeah.
John Mitchell, who played 9 years, played a little bit with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Paul Bissonnette was in that draft. So that was the first year that they actually went online, and it did change things, and it moved it along. I mean, we're going to see a 2-day event again, but when you have players coming up, if that's the way they choose to do it, they haven't announced the complete format, but maybe for the first round, you do have players coming up getting a sweater. I don't know. If that is the case, then there will be a future Mark Hunter. And one of the greatest live draft stories comes from the London Knights, where the draft was taking place the year before, and it was Mark and Dale Hunter's first draft, and they had this guy, Rick Nash, that they didn't believe would fall to them. They drafted with the 4th pick, and they didn't believe Rick Nash would be there, and the first pick wasn't Rick Nash, and the second pick wasn't Rick Nash, and the third pick was Richard instead of Rick. And so Mark Hunter, when he heard Richard Power being called by the Owen Sound Attack, they needed a defenseman. He ran for that podium. And from the Toronto Marlies, the London Knights are proud to select Rick Nash. And that's the kind of thing that can happen. It'll be a lot of fun in Kingston for sure.
And now Rick Nash's name and number is hanging up at Canada Life Place, and one of the many iconic players to have been selected and have been a part of this organization. Really cool. It's funny, Mike, when you mentioned the 01 and you went down the list, and I'm like, yeah, Stanley Cup champion, captain, Stanley Cup champion. Just, it's funny that those are guys that were selected in the OHL draft that still had that impact at the NHL level. And Patrick O'Sullivan was a very, very good NHLer as well. I don't know if he won a cup or not, but I know Nathan Horton did as a Bruin. I know Richards and Carter did as Kings. And obviously Corey Perry with the Ducks too. And Corey Perry has been instrumental despite him being however many years later into his career. And he is just such an influence on that LA Kings team and how big he was in Edmonton. And he should have like 3 or 4 now, but nevertheless, it's a lot of winners and a lot of really good players coming out of that.
Yeah, Patrick O'Sullivan is a career that we need to remember, because, he played 6 years in the NHL, didn't win a Stanley Cup, but had a World Junior championship winning goal for the United States. And that was back in 2004. And that was the year where a clearing attempt went off a skate and into the Canada net. And that ended up being a big one. So we won't revisit that right now. What we will do in the very near future is be talking about Canada's invites to this year's World Junior team. That should come out early December, and then players usually leave 9th, 10th, 11th. So we're getting close to that. The Knights are getting very, very close to their next extended road trip, and this will be their last extended road trip. They did an early one east. This is their road trip north. So they will be facing the North Bay Battalion, who, as we record this, sit in 5th and have had some real spark to them of late. They are 3-0-1 in their last 4, and they are above 500, and North Bay can be a tough place to play. So that's where it begins on Thursday. If you're listening to this on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And then the Knights will go to Sudbury and face a Wolves team that's had a bit of a tough year. I still think that this is a club defensively has been tough. It's been tough keeping the puck out of the Sudbury Wolves net. They've given up 91 goals, which ties them with Sarnia right now for what would be 18th in the 20-team league. And so that's something that you want to try and tidy up. But then the Knights have a rematch with Sault Ste. Marie. And this time the Greyhounds are going to be on their home ice. And they will not like the fact that the Knights beat them in the first meeting, and they'll want to do what the Knights did, and it'll be the Knights' first 3-3 this year. That's really the big test. Surprising. Sometimes there are a lot of 3 games in 3-day sets. The schedule this year has not had that for the London Knights. It's been a little kinder because those are tough to play, but this will be North Bay, Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie on consecutive nights, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll have coverage for you on 980 CFPL beginning at 6:30 each of those nights, and then we'll recap things when the Knights get back on the next edition of the Night Shift.
Could be exciting stuff. And yeah, that 3-game road trip, always good for the guys to get out. It's a good bonding experience for the team, especially if you're going all the way out to North Bay too, into the Sioux. So you know that there's going to be some good times, good memories made by those guys. Those road trips are fantastic. I didn't do it at the OHL level, but I did trips, Mike, out to Temiskaming, Quebec, out in Montreal, and played in a barn in front of about 3,000 or 4,000 people. And one of the coolest nights of playing in front of a crowd. It was sold out. It's what you did on a Friday night. Similarly here to London, just a bigger magnitude over here.
Yeah, it is right. Those cities love their teams as well, and so that will bring things out as well. The London Knights are in town. That usually brings out a lot of people, and it's not supposed to be minus 50 something with the wind chill in Sudbury. So thank you, schedule makers, for putting this particular trip in November as opposed to February. Sometimes we go in February, and there was a time when I think the wind chill was minus 55 in Sudbury. And if you had any part of your face exposed and you were outside for longer than about 5 seconds, it hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe after the trip, we come back and you tell a story or two of those times, because I can only imagine how cold it is up there, Mike.
Yeah, we'll see the wolf. The wolf still exists, so we'll tell some wolf stories. We're losing some of the things that we used to be able to talk about. The Bayshore Bounce no longer exists. Right. The Sudbury Wolf is still there, so I'll make sure and get a picture of it.
As always, Mike, appreciate it. And yeah, enjoy the road trip with the team. And you can, again, follow podcasts wherever you get it. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. The London Knights will upload the full episodes for video form. If you want to watch it on YouTube, we'll share it up on our platforms as well. Mike, enjoy the road trip, and we'll see you back on the podcast next week.
Sounds good.